Nintendo revealed a brand new look at Echoes of Wisdom, so let's dive right in as there is a lot to cover. We begin the trailer with an empty, sketched out map of the entirety of Hyrule, akin to the unexplored areas of the map of the Link's Awakening remake, with painted landmarks dotted around it. Using all the combined footage from the past trailer and this one, I've put together a full map of Hyrule with all the currently shown areas, although some of the areas are still somewhat of a mystery where exactly they are located. Let's take a deeper look. At the center of the map, we have Hyrule Castle, and surrounding the castle is Castle Town, found within its walls. The narrator describes Hyrule Castle to be on a central plateau.
From the central plateau, where Hyrule Castle stands enfolded by its castle town.
But this is only in the English version, as in the Japanese trailer, they say this instead.
豊かな自然が織りなす大地、ハイラル。大きな平原の中心にハイラル城があり。
The term used by the narrator is Hagen, the same term used for Hyrule Field. If it were a plateau as the English narrator states, the term used would be Daichi, which is not the case. While not seen very clearly, we see a depiction of a sanctuary and 4 tombstones above the location of Hyrule Castle, this being the same sanctuary and cemetery as seen in A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds. In fact, we can actually barely see the sanctuary's blue roof and some of the cemetery's tombstones on this shot just behind the castle. Something to note is that the sanctuary in Echoes of Wisdom appears to have a tower similar to that of a cathedral, unlike its prior depictions in A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds, perhaps to make it resemble the Temple of Time as a means to tie the two locations together. If we take a closer look at the cemetery, we can even see that one of the tombstones is larger than the rest, sitting atop a large pedestal. This is very reminiscent to the Royal Valley from the Minish Cap, where the royal crypt was found under the largest tombstone in the highest elevation. Going further down from Hyrule Castle, we have the same hill where Link's house, or our house as it was known in Japanese, was found on in both A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds, now seemingly missing for reasons yet unknown. In its place, we see 2 guards standing there instead. I wonder if they have something to say about the missing house. To the east of the castle, we find a small field with rocks seen in A Link to the Past, A Link Between Worlds, and in the prior trailer of Echoes of Wisdom. But this area, at least currently, goes unnamed. A little further northeast of the rock field is where the Eastern Temple from A Link to the Past would be located, which we saw a glimpse of in the first trailer. This temple was also reused in Forza's Adventures and later reappeared in A Link Between Worlds, making this game the 4th appearance of this temple. We see something else marked on the map just above the instant temple, which looks to be a house. If we look at the map of A Link to the Past, we can actually find the magic shop, the potion shop of Syrup the Witch, so this is probably that exact location. This landmark, of course, is at the foot of Mount Hebra, a mountain that also went by the name of Death Mountain. Another location returning from A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds, this time covered in snow, much like it was in Breath of the Wild. If we head further down the map, we will encounter the Prairie, known in the English localization as the Great Swamp, seen in A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds, with the same ruins and ponds, and further down, the entrance to the swamp ruins, or as it is known in Japanese, the Prairie Small Shrine, a mini dungeon of sorts, and in A Link Between Worlds, it became one of the 7 treasure hunting caves found across Hyrule. Whatever these ruins house this time around, it will be completely unique to the last 2 games. While this would be the edge of the A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds map, Echoes of Wisdom extends the map even further south, revealing brand new areas never before seen in Hyrule. First, we have the Suthorn Beach, simply known in Japanese as the South Beach. To the right of it, we have the Suthorn village, or South Village, found within an area known as the Suthorn Prairie, or South Prairie. And the remaining eastern side of the southern area is known as the Suthorn Forest, or South Forest, as mentioned in the description of this side quest. To the east of the South Prairie, past a tall cliff, a new jungle area simply known as the Faron Wetlands can be found, home of the wood-like Deku scrubs. We see this area a few times in this trailer, as well as the previous one, but their locations are hard to pin down concretely, at least for the time being. The first shot we see in the Faron Wetlands shows two piranhas swimming in greenish waters. Immediately after this, we see a shot with large stone ruins depicting the Deku who reside in this region. Several parrots can be seen perched on these ruins, and at the very top, we see a wooden bridge leading to a lake, which may necessitate Sora flippers to traverse. In this next shot, we first see one of those strange glowing rocks we've seen all across this iteration of Hyrule, which we will cover more in detail at a later point in this video. But to the right, we encounter a Deku scrub, this one having a peculiar flower on its head. This is a Rafflesia arnoldi, known as the corpse flower or giant Padma, a species of flowering plant noted for producing the largest individual flower on Earth, which has a strong and unpleasant odor of decaying flesh. And on top of the ruins next to it, we see what looks to be a purple pumpkin, likely one of the many ingredients of this game, but we will come back to the ingredients much later in the video. The next shot shows us another Deku scrub, this one being vastly different from the previous one, having a twirly leaf on its head quite similar to that of Skyward Sword's Kikwi, Machi, and two leaves acting as the mustache, like those seen on the Deku from Majora's Mask. This lone Deku scrub can be seen eating cotton candy made of spiderwebs. In the background, we can see blue, glowing mushrooms, which likely are materials too, but whatever their effect could be is completely unknown. Following that shot, we get another scene with three unique Deku scrubs, two of which are eating spiderweb cotton candy. One of them has a red leaf like a mohawk, and another two ball-like leaf hairs on each side, like the ones the Deku Battler had in Majora's Mask. This Deku is also seen on this promotional artwork, alongside two other unique Deku. It's nice to see so much variety in their designs, by mixing and matching their different hair accessories in a similar way to the NPCs of Breath of the Wild. The third one at the top, instead, has a bush-like hair and looks rather sad, perhaps because it doesn't have cotton candy. This entire region reminds me a lot of the Deku Kingdom from Majora's Mask. I fully expect the Deku King from that game to make an appearance in this game as the leader of this returning tribe. It's also worth noting that in this Faron Wetlands general area, there is a heart-shaped pond, which does appear to be a direct reference or maybe the actual same place from Breath of the Wild, known as Lover's Pond, a location found in the southeastern corner of Breath of the Wild's Hyrule, within the Faron region, which I will mark on the map as Lover's Pond until it's proven otherwise. East of the Prairie and north of the Suthorn Forest is the lake known as Lake Hylia, which, as seen on the first trailer, has the same island as that seen in A Link to the Past, which was known as the Fountain of Happiness, which by the time of A Link Between Worlds was transformed into the House of Gales. To the lake's left side, we can see a large rift marked on the map, but we will talk about this a little bit later. East of the Eastern Temple, extending beyond the reaches of the map of A Link to the Past, is where, presumably, Jabul Waters will be found, the domain of the two Sora tribes of Hyrule, the Sea Sora and the River Sora, a distinction that has not been made in a Zelda game since Oracle of Ages, where a Sea Sora even denotes their difference, calling the River Sora vulgar and savage, in contrast to their more noble counterparts. The name Jabul clearly stems from Jabu Jabu, the guardian deity of the Sora tribe, first appearing in Ocarina of Time. We are first greeted to the scenic area of a pond fed by a waterfall, surrounded by trees with blue birds perched on top of them. This same area is seen in this shot of two Sora fighting, an extended version of the shot from the last trailer, where we get a bit more context on what exactly is going on, with the River Sora named Drad not wanting the Sea Sora Queen to be in this location. This area is very reminiscent to Sora's fountain from Ocarina of Time, where Jabu Jabu was located. It may be possible that Jabu Jabu has, perhaps, been spirited away by the rifts, and the Sora blame each other for their guardian deity's disappearance, causing the dispute between the two Sora tribes. In the next shot, we see another location of Jabul Waters, this time of a big open water area, with stone pillars coming out of the water, as one lone light blue tektite jumps around the water. In this next shot, we see a member of the Sea Sora tribe swimming in an open water area. What is of note here is this fish-like tail structure in the middle of this island, the entrance of which seems to be underwater. This appears to be the location of the Sea Sora Village, which has a striking resemblance to the Sora Hall from Majora's Mask. This appears to be located here on the map, where there is an icon that looks similar to the fishtail structure, so I'll mark this location as the Sea Sora Village. What is to be noted, however, is the Sora crest above the gate, which appears to be solely attributed to the Sea Sora. But if the Sea Sora have this crest, what about the River Sora? I think that, potentially, the River Sora may have a variation of this crest, which may simply be inverted, akin to how the Giga Clan's crest is the inverted eye of the Sheikah. Contrary to Drad's text box, this Sora does not have a name on the corner. The same is true in this next shot when Link speaks to this River Sora, perhaps due to them being generic NPCs. This area we see here is part of the River Sora village, the name told to us by the River Sora, so I'll mark it on the map as well. This is a location we saw from another point in the earlier trailer, closer to the rift we can see in the minimap, and we also get a closer look at the outside of the River Sora shop. Later in the trailer, we see a shot of potentially inside the shop, where a female Sora has pots with blue potion and red potion. Red potions in most games recover partial health, while blue potions recover all health and in some cases even magic. There is also sea horses on sale, as well as Sora flippers, resembling the feet of River Sora, instead of Sora flippers of past Zelda games. With them, according to the description, Zelda can swim faster. Aside from the Sora flippers, other accessories can be equipped by Zelda, which gives her unique abilities, but we will go over this a bit later on. A little up north from the last shot, we see another portion of the River Sora village, where we see another River Sora accompanied by a baby River Sora. There is also a chest that can be seen underwater, which may be accessible by diving underwater, or using an ability we will talk about later. In this next shot, we see the interior of their Sea Sora village, dotted with more sea-like decoration, such as corals, sponges, and conches. Within the water, we also see a Sea Sora child, like we saw for the River Sora. As was the case for the shop of the River Sora, the Sea Sora shop, marked with a bag icon, also has cauldrons with potions. Later in the trailer, we see a shot of Zelda traversing another area of Jabul Waters, which does appear to be relatively close to the river Sora village. We can also see that blue bird from prior shots again, as well as purple butterflies fluttering around purple flowers. Heading east from the Prairie small shrine, the area transitions into a canyon we briefly saw in this shot with the Deku Baba and crows, a location we also see in A Link to the Past, as it opens up to lead into Gerudo Desert. What is interesting is that this desert no longer goes by the name it went by in A Link to the Past, A Link Between Worlds, and Forza's Adventures, that being the Desert of Mystery. This time being called Gerudo Desert, despite the world being heavily built upon that of A Link to the Past. The first shot we see of the Gerudo Desert is this one with cacti scattered across the dunes of the desert. While it is very hard to spot, in the top right corner we see a small fin of a creature moving around the sands. This may be a variant of the piranha, a never before seen sand piranha, akin to how the Minish Cap introduced cloud piranhas that swam in the cloud tops. This is then followed by the shot where we see Zelda in the middle of Gerudo Desert, where a sandstorm is passing by, as Zelda suffers from the intense desert heat. We can also see more of these sand piranhas swimming at the top of the shot. Then we get a shot within Gerudo Town, where Zelda encounters several Gerudo soldiers wearing golden armor, two of which are talking about the rifts that have emerged in the desert. On the ceiling of the left building, a black cat is seen sleeping, and on the other building's ceiling, a unique bird is also seen perched atop a large pot. Next, we see a shot inside a desert cave, which appears to be the same or a similar cave as the one we saw in the earlier trailer with the wind turbines. It is in this cave that we encounter a new enemy type, a beetle, an enemy seen in all the games of the series, primarily in Link's Awakening, both Oracle games, and the Minish Cap. They appear to spawn from these hive mounts at the top, which sparkle to signify that they can be echoed. It's highly likely that when we place these hives, beetles will come out of them in groups to attack enemies, rather than the beetles themselves being the echoes. Next, we see a shot of an oasis in Gerudo Desert. We see two Gerudo guards right by the edge of the pond, and a merchant to the side of it, who has what appears to be a cantaloupe for sale, as well as what looks to be tomatoes. Another merchant can be seen in the corner, with bags and other items, but it is hard to know exactly what they are selling. At the top, there appears to be another structure, possibly an inn, or maybe yet another shop. It really is impossible to tell. To the west of the castle, we see this landmark on the map, which we see a glimpse of in this shot of the second trailer. This appears to be this game's Lon Lon Ranch, especially with the fences surrounding it, so I'll mark it as such on the map until it's confirmed otherwise. The areas surrounding the presumed Lon Lon Ranch are seen dotted between both trailers, starting with this shot from the first trailer, a bit further north from Lon Lon Ranch, or this shot with Zelda fighting ropes taking place a bit to the east of the previous one, or this shot from the second trailer, very close to the other two areas. Further west from Lon Lon Ranch, nestled at the mountain's base, we find Kakariko Village, which we had seen previously in the first trailer in this shot, located in the exact place as this shot from the second trailer, where we can see this same character. Kakariko Village is also seen on this shot of the first trailer at the base of the mountain. This shot of the business craft just outside of the village, in which we can see the gate of Kakariko Village, and later again in this first Kakariko shot of the second trailer, where we can see several NPCs, a shop with the same bag icon as the other shops of the Sora villages, with a basket of regular red apples, and a cuckoo hopping up the stairs, as well as right beside this house. We can also see a black bird, perhaps this being a crow, and a grey cat. There is also a well in the middle of the village, with a lid placed on top, which may be removable with an ability we've yet to cover. North of the shots, we see a windmill just at the base of the mountain, but this is not the same windmill as the one we saw earlier. These are two distinct windmills belonging to Kakariko Village. If we look back at this shot of the first trailer, we can barely see a dense forest to the right of it, shrouded in blue mist. This, especially judging by its location in A Link to the Past, is the Lost Woods, which we have a glimpse of in the first trailer with the shot of the Great Deku Tree. To the west of the Lost Woods, we have the large mountain we now know as Eldin Volcano, home of the Gorons. This is the second time in the series where the volcanic mountain of Hyrule has gone by that name, the first time being Skyward Sword. The first shot we see in Eldin Volcano in this trailer is of these daunting cliffs, where there are several things of note. First, there are these fiery slug-like enemies moving along the surface of this climbable rock, which most likely are this game's versions of torch slugs, seen only in Ocarina of Time and Twilight Princess. On the other climbable wall, we see a returning enemy, Tails, which were wrongly localized as Moldoms in the English versions of the games, despite Moldoms being the entirely different enemy types from Tails, with both being found in A Link to the Past, with the Swamolas being the real Moldoms, which is why Tail Cave in Link's Awakening is called Tail Cave, because it is the cave of the tail enemies. It's not the Moldom Cave. I hate having to clarify this every time these enemies show up, but here we are. You can thank Nintendo's localization team for that one. Anyways, between these climbable walls, we can also find a chest. These climbable walls are very reminiscent of the ones found on Mount Grenell in the Minish Cap, which require the use of the grip ring to be able to scale it. Perhaps the same will be true for Zelda, necessitating something like the grip ring to scale up Death Mountain. At the top of this shot, we can see the entrance to Goron City, as well as the Goron guarding its entrance, which we get a much clearer view of in this next shot here, where Zelda speaks to that same Goron who introduces her to Goron City. Goron City's entrance can also be seen from the initial cliff shot of the first trailer. The way the entrance of Goron City is built is quite reminiscent of the architecture found in Goron City from Breath of the Wild, yet another tie-in to that game's world building. The next shot we see is of a more volcanic area of Eldin Volcano, with a huge lava lake and pillars of lava that emerge from it, raising rocks much like those seen in the Wind Waker's Dragon Roost Cavern. A giant rift can also be seen in the lava, with a large boulder in the middle. More on this later. Inside what is presumed to be Goron City, we see a Goron named Darstan, who shows Zelda a pile of rock roast, which he describes to be one of the Goron's favorite food. This is a clear carryover from Breath of the Wild, where Gorons also enjoyed eating rock roasts. The narrator also mentions that these meals are not for Hylians. Well, about that. As mentioned previously, east of the Lost Woods, we have the snow-covered Mount Hebra, this being the exact location as Mount Hebra in A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds, which also went by the name Death Mountain. What is strange, however, is that now Eldin Volcano appears to be serving the role of Death Mountain, being the home of the Goron tribe, with this mountain being added to Hyrule seemingly out of nowhere. Even back in A Link Between Worlds, Mount Hebra was depicted as a volcano, with Rosso even having attire and a design resembling those of the Gorons, even having the Goron crest. What I think happened is that they essentially got this part of the mountain from A Link Between Worlds, the volcanic peak, called it Eldin Volcano, and placed it at the other side of the Lost Woods, while the remaining part of the mountain, the other peak, remained as Mount Hebra, and they covered it in snow to make it distinct, as well as to harken back to Breath of the Wild's map, where Hebra and Death Mountain were also separated into their own distinct mountains. And it is very possible that, with the Gorons now being settled in Eldin Volcano, Hebra, like Breath of the Wild, will be the home of the Rito tribe, each major area having their respective peoples living in them. Near the end of the trailer, we see a large rift in a forested area, which Tri, using its powers, opens up for Zelda to safely jump into. Judging by the cliff and tree layout, and the large lake at the top of the screen, this must be the temple we can see marked on this part of the map, to the east of the South Prairie. This is the same temple Zelda escaped from at the start of the game, the one she was imprisoned in by Ganon, which Link ventured into to save her. In fact, if we continue the path from the temple to the west, we can even find the same cliff of this shot of Zelda overlooking Hyrule. This will likely be the first temple in the game. We know this dungeon will be where we will start the game as Link, where we will fight Ganon and then take control of Zelda after Link gets spirited away by the emerging rifts. Like the dungeons of Link's Awakening, we also have seen this dungeon as a side-scrolling section, where Zelda uses an ability that we will cover more in detail later on. We can tell this is the same dungeon, given the styles of pillars seen here shared with the other rooms of the temple. In the first trailer, we also saw Zelda stand in front of a large golem creature, which may be the boss of this dungeon. The purple particles seen floating around the room are further indication that this dungeon is inside the giant rift. These same particles can also be seen floating within this water-themed dungeon we saw in the first trailer, which may be the dungeon located behind the gigantic rift seen here on the map of Lake Hylia, marking this as the second potential dungeon location. A bit later in the trailer, we see the shot of who appears to be the Gerudo chief, and several soldiers within a structure in the desert, where a large rift has formed, having the same golden ripples as those seen in the big rift of the Suthorn Forest Temple. This is not Gerudo Town, but the entrance of the Desert Temple from A Link to the Past, which was found in the northwestern portion of the desert, which appears to be north of Gerudo Town in this game. The Eastern Temple is a returning dungeon from A Link to the Past, which more than likely will serve as yet another of this game's primary dungeons, having been reused in Forza's Adventures and A Link Between Worlds after its debut in A Link to the Past, making this game the fourth time this dungeon makes an appearance in a Zelda game. Another potential location for a dungeon is Eldin Volcano, themed around fire and lava. In fact, we see the large rift the same size as the one in Lake Hylia's map in this shot of Eldin Volcano. Within the rift, there is a large boulder which potentially may be an overworld boss that may be blocking the entrance to the rift, similar to Turtle Rock in Link's Awakening. While nothing has been fully shown for Hebra other than a general depiction of the mountain, we can be sure to expect a nice themed temple atop the Jellied Peak, as was the case for the snowy Lorulian counterpart of Hyrule's Mount Hebra in A Link Between Worlds. Like other dungeons mentioned, in the first trailer, we also catch a glimpse of another side-scrolling section within a jungle-themed temple, where Zelda uses the Skulltula Echoes, which we now know would be located within the Faron Wetlands. We know this is the Faron Wetlands, given these green and red plants on the walls, sharing the color and theming as those seen on the Faron Wetlands. Another major rift is found a bit later in the second trailer, on this shot right here, where we see the entrance to a cavern in the shape of a fish, very reminiscent to the dungeon entrance to Angler Stano from Link's Awakening, but this time shaped around Jabul's design. This may be the entrance to another dungeon of the game, found within Jabul Waters. And finally, Hyrule Castle, which also has a gigantic rift over it, much larger than the rest of the rifts seen in the world so far. Unless they go the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom route of having the final dungeon accessible from the start, which I really hope they don't do, Hyrule Castle could potentially be the final dungeon of the game, marking a total of 9 dungeons, 8 around the world, plus a final 9th dungeon, as was the case with earlier games of the series. And while the big rifts would be the entrances to the dungeons, we can also find numerous smaller rifts all across Hyrule, which may be equivalent to the shrines of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom in the sense of being mini dungeons, each with their own unique puzzle to complete, and perhaps rewarding a piece of heart each. As rifts begin to emerge, we see that shadow versions of monsters, primarily moblins in this case, begin to appear in Hyrule around these rifts, perhaps these being dark echoes summoned by whomever the antagonist of this game ends up being, which I am starting to suspect will not be Ganon, since we defeated him at the start of the game, but rather a brand new villain. Echoes of Wisdom allows for a multitude of accessories to be equipped by Zelda to grant her a multitude of buffs. First, we have the aforementioned Sora flippers, in the shape of the feet of River Sora, which allow the wearer to swim faster in water. The Sora Scale is a charm made via secret Sora methods, which enables the wearer to hold their breath for longer underwater. It is possible that Zelda will start the game with the ability to dive underwater from the start, but perhaps that will be an ability she will unlock like in prior Zelda games. Then there's the Frog Ring, said to be imbued with the spirit of a frog, allowing the wearer to jump higher. It is unknown if Zelda will be able to jump from the get-go, like in Breath of the Wild with a dedicated button input, or if she will need use of the Rock's Feather like Link did in Link's Awakening. Then we have a heart pin, a hairpin with a distinctive heart design, which apparently makes hearts appear a little more often. This one is interesting, as it confirms the return of hearts as a method of healing. But what's interesting is that there are many other methods of healing Zelda, but we will come back to those a bit later. There is also a flower accessory, but we don't get any indication of what it might actually do, other than a butterfly icon next to the bag. Zelda is next seen wearing her hooded attire, as she changes to another with her hair in a ponytail, and a Gerudo styled outfit, possibly each of them giving Zelda a unique buff, as was the case for outfits in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Around Hyrule, we may encounter smoothie shops, manned by business scrubs. We have seen a few of them already, such as the one in Death Mountain right next to the entrance to Goron City, or the one at the entrance of Kakariko Village. To make smoothies, Zelda can blend ingredients that she can find while exploring. When mixed, they create a variety of smoothies with different properties and healthy benefits. We are shown 9 ingredients in this shot alone, with the first one being an electro apple, the description of which saying that it is a juicy apple with a slight electric tinge. When used in a drink, it grants the drinker resistance to electricity. This confirms that we will not only see regular apples, which were the only consumable in Link's Awakening, but also other apple types of different effects like mushrooms in Breath of the Wild, such as, perhaps, a chili apple, similar to the chili cactus, a cool, bittersweet cactus enjoyed as a dessert. When used in a drink, it grants the drink resistance to fire. This too may have other variants with different properties. The next one is fresh milk, described as a sweet and refreshing milk of the highest quality, and that when used in a drink, it boosts the healing effect to the drinker by a lot. When mixed with an electro apple, it creates a mixed milky smoothie, whose description reads, "This appetizing blend of assorted flavors floats freely in a milky smooth base." And finally, we have the floral nectar, described as sweet nectar with a floral scent, and that, when used in a drink, it boosts the effects of other ingredients, which when mixed with an electro apple, it gives Zelda a green mixed apple smoothie, which as the ingredients description stated, would likely boost the electric resistant effect. We also see a seahorse, a bundle of grapes, a red chili pepper, rocks of some kind, and a monster horn or tooth, the uses of which are, as of now, a complete mystery. On the stand or the business scrub, we can also see a regular red apple, a pear, and what appears to be grapes or berries, as well as a carrot, which has another use we will talk about later. Quests are making their first ever top-down debut in Echoes of Wisdom, having the same layout as those seen for Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom in the Adventure Log, divided between main quests and side quests. When it comes to the main quests, there are but a few that can be seen in the trailer, which can be marked on the map with a yellow circular icon like those of the aforementioned Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Once completed, the questline will be grayed out and no longer selectable, as seen with the last one. There are 4 noted questlines, one of which has a detailed description. Let's take a look. Ancestors' Cave of Rest. The torches at the gravesite inside the Ancestors' Cave of Rest have gone out, but the rift is blocking the path. The Gerudo soldier doesn't know how to access the torches to relight them. This is in reference to the questline given to Zelda by this Gerudo soldier, which would be part of the Gerudo storyline leading to the dungeon. A rift in the Gerudo Desert is the second questline noted. This one is tied to the Gerudo region and part of the quest that may involve the rift of the Desert Temple. It's likely that the other regional main quests may have similar names, such as a rift in the Eldin Volcano or a rift in Mount Hebra. Searching for Everyone is the third questline noted. This one may revolve around finding a select group of people who have fallen into the rifts, perhaps each rift having one or several people in need of saving. And the mysterious rifts, which may revolve around investigating rifts early on in the game. Side quests, on the other hand, instead of being marked in yellow, are marked with a blue icon, differentiating the two and making them easy to follow on the map. In this shot, we get the titles of 5 quests and some descriptions for them. Let's look at each one and see what we can learn. Finding the Flying Plant. An elderly man from Suthorn village is hoping to cheer up his wife with a flying plant. He last saw it near some caves deep in Suthorn forest. The flying plant the old man from Suthorn village is referring to is very clearly a peahat, which we've seen 2 kinds of already in Echoes of Wisdom trailers and promotional art, likely being a red and blue variant of the same enemy. The quest may involve bringing them an echo of a peahat, which I assume either type, red or blue, would do for this quest, unless they are very specific for the type of enemy they want, down to its color. Up a Wall is the next side quest seen in the adventure log. It is found in the Prairie, where a man pleads for Zelda to aid in fighting off the monsters that surround him. Elusive Tumbleweeds is the third side quest noted, but not much is known about it. It may involve Zelda having to get a tumbleweed for an NPC, likely in the form of an echo. Tornado Ghost is a side quest given to us in Gerudo Town by this Gerudo lady who speaks to Zelda about these so-called tornado ghosts. This may be a brand new enemy type yet to be seen, which may be found solely in the deserts of the Gerudo. She may be asking Zelda to bring her one of them, in the form of an echo. What comes to mind when thinking of a tornado ghost, or Yurei, is some kind of monster the likes of Cyclops from Phantom Hourglass, or Vati from the Four Swords games. A monster that literally controls tornadoes, which could be anything, from an Octorok to a floating skull like the Bubbles. Cuckoos on the Loose is the final side quest listed, which would naturally be found in Kakariko Village, where these sorts of quests tend to be located in the series. The quest in question likely would be associated with this lady here right next to the animal pen, involving cuckoos which have escaped and scattered across the village. Her shouting "Bok Bok" as she pleads for them to come back likely is her imitating the sounds of the cuckoos. But there are glimpses of other side quests in the trailer too, such as the Scorn Child, whose brother won't play at all with him on the glider ride, which may necessitate for Zelda to convince him in some way or another. And this other questline in Castletown, where a small child asks to see a soul, and Zelda must find and bring him an echo of it to complete said quest. In this shot, we also see a dog, and also a wanted poster of Princess Zelda, with a comically large nose. I think it's pretty clear who is the handsome artist who drew this poster.
I call it bold and bright.
While we haven't seen the notebook in action yet, we now have seen the icon for it in the adventure log. In the first trailer, when Zelda chose which echo she would use, the bottom of the screen showed that she could open up the notebook by pressing the plus button. This may be equivalent to the Hyrule Companion from the Wild Era games, where Zelda would keep notes of every echo she comes across and its potential uses, as a reminder for the player in case they forget, to be able to go in and read about them at any point, with perhaps some additional lore attached. Across the land of Hyrule, objects known as waypoints can be found near important landmarks of the kingdom. Once discovered, these strange stones will begin to glow golden to denote their activation, allowing Zelda to warp from one location to another with ease by selecting it on the map. But even with the benefit of fast travel, traveling across Hyrule can prove to be challenging, which is why we can ride our horses too, which we can use to dash through enemies and jump over small obstacles. The Carrot Echo, see, I told you we'll get to this, can be used to summon your horse from anywhere in the overworld, much like the horse call from Twilight Princess. Something to note is that, during this section, the music playing in the background has the leitmotif of Hyrule Castle, which is a pretty cool detail. Take a listen. We then see a shot of Zelda summoning a Keese within a cave, which she then uses to glide over a gap by use of the gusts of wind. Following this, Zelda summons an Angler Fry in a dark underwater passage, which she uses to light the way. And now we move on to Zelda's brand new ability, Bind. The way it works is quite simple. Zelda directs Try to fly into an object, and she gets bound to it through green energy. When Zelda moves, the objects move with her, which she can then get out of the way to access switches or other locations. It acts and looks like a mix between the Dominion Rod from Twilight Princess and Ultra Hand from Tears of the Kingdom. In fact, between this ability and Link's sword looking like the fuse icon, I'm seeing a pattern of similarities to Tears of the Kingdom. I wonder if this is intentional. In the next shot, Zelda can use Bind to unearth a buried treasure in an identical way to Magnesis. We can also see here more clearly that Link's house is completely gone from this hill, and in its place are 2 guards. Next, we see a shot atop Eldin Volcano, where Zelda uses Bind on Alisalfos to throw it off a cliff. Back in a Lon Lon Ranch area, Zelda summons a sea urchin and uses Bind to move it around and automatically hurt enemies that come in contact with it. Within the aforementioned Suthorn Forest Temple, Zelda is shown using another aspect of this ability, Reverse Bond, in which Zelda would now be the one bonded to wherever she's used the ability on, with that object moving Zelda instead of Zelda moving it. This is demonstrated again in this shot of Kakariko, where Zelda binds herself and reverse bonds to a crow, and begins to fly around being carried by the bird. And again here, by summoning an armadillo, whom Zelda binds and reverse bonds to quickly move around as it rolls. And once again here, this time with a black variant of the spider enemy, which carries Zelda up walls. This black spider enemy may be a Waltula, given it can climb walls, contrary to the other yellow spider, which behaves much more like Skulltulas of other games, hanging off ceilings with their spiderwebs. Next, we see a shot with another enemy type, a mole-like creature which could perhaps be related to the Acro Bandits from the Minish Cap, but perhaps not. Zelda uses the hole created by the mole to carry a red moblin to it and drop him in. This shot takes place in Suthorn Forest, in the same location as in the first trailer, where Zelda used beds to climb the cliff. And that's pretty much all of the footage of the trailer covered. But believe me, we are not done yet. We have yet to cover more promotional images and videos showcased in the Japanese website of the game. But I'm going to leave that for a completely separate video, because the amount of content that we can find in that website is absolutely insane. So expect a video about that relatively soon. And that was my full, in-depth analysis of the newest Echoes of Wisdom trailer. Did I miss anything? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to get notified of future uploads. Also, consider following me on Twitter and Instagram to stay in touch. This has been Solo Lore, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.